Hey everyone, this is Hubwood, and today we're going to take a first look at the brand new RTX 5070 Ti mobile in this MSI Vector 16HX, which I bought with my own money by the way, where it's paired with an Intel Core i7 255HX and 16GB of DDR5 5600 megatransfer per second RAM. And that is probably going to be the cheapest RTX 5070 Ti laptop that will be available for a while, starting at around 1,999 euros and probably a similar price in dollars. For today's video, we're specifically going to compare it to its, predecessor. Well, to be honest, there was no RTX 4070 Ti, so we're taking the RTX 4070 mobile instead, while we could also consider the RTX 4080 mobile, while that was, especially at the start, quite a bit more expensive. And I think in a few months we might see 5070 Ti laptops well under $2,000. The big news for the 5070 Ti is that it finally has 12GB of VRAM, while the 5070 mobile without the Ti will again have only 8GB of RAM, which is absolutely ridiculous if you ask me. Oh, and it can also boost up to 140 watt in this case, while the RTX 4070 mobile was actually kinda capped at 100 watts via a voltage cap. However, I've tested a bunch of games with this laptop, and for the RTX 4070 I was using an MSI Sword 17HX with an Intel Core i7 14700HX a few weeks ago, so probably one of the best CPUs you can get with that 4070 mobile in a laptop to minimize the CPU bottleneck. If you want to see a review of today's used laptop, the MSI Vector 16HX, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss that. And spoiler up front, I'm pretty impressed with this laptop so far. All of today's tested games have been recorded while the laptops were plugged in, and I used their performance mode with maximum fan speeds using an external capture card. But as NVIDIA f***ed up the recent game-ready drivers, I can't show you the temperatures as the third-party tools aren't working for that right now. Yay! But before we begin, let's see who is the sponsor for today's video.
Well, it's Sihoo. You know, sitting all day really messes with your body if you're not having a good chair, and stand up once in a while. Maybe not when you're 22, but the day will come for sure, I can promise you that. And many users out there think their gaming chairs have them covered, but they really don't. That's why today we're talking about the Sihoo Doro C300. Extremely ergonomic, affordable, and looking really cool at the same time. Available in black or white. This chair is what I'd call the grown-up upgrade. It doesn't scream, "I'm a gaming chair." It looks clean, modern, and actually also fits into a nice workspace or studio. No RGB, no racing stripes, just smart design and really good ergonomics. And high quality. And that's what matters. The Sihoo Doro C300 has a self-adaptive lumbar support that moves with you, ensuring your back is supported all the time. A breathable mesh backrest so you don't end up sitting in your own sweat like in these fat gaming chairs. And it even has fully adjustable 4D armrests that you can move up and down, forward and backwards, or turn them inside for more comfort, while the 3D headrest can perfectly adapt to your size to comfortably lean back, while it's just giving your neck the exact amount of support it needs. It's basically the opposite of these bulky gaming chairs that pretend to be ergonomic just because they're big and look like racing chairs. Whether you're gaming or watching a movie, browsing the web, it has you covered with the right position. And even Forbes praised this, an affordable alternative to the Herman Miller Aeron. CEO caliber comfort at a price hard to resist. So, if you want real comfort without the pretentious racing chair vibe, the Sihoo Doro C300 honestly is a slick, breathable, and ergonomic upgrade. Highly recommended. Your back will definitely thank you, and your setup might just look better as well. If you'd like to check out the Sihoo Doro C300, I'll drop a link below. And yeah, there's even a little discount in it for you. Use my code for 6% off when checking out. And thanks a lot to Sihoo for sponsoring this video.
Okay, so the first game for today will be Assassin's Creed Valhalla at 1080p using the Ultra preset, and we're always going to look at the 1080p results first and then compare it to the 1440p results directly after that. So in this case, the RTX 4070 mobile was getting an average of 111 FPS, which is quite good to be honest, and the RTX 5070 Ti mobile was already getting 147 FPS, which is an improvement of 32%. That's not bad, and as we can see here, the VRAM is actually not mattering in this case because both of them won't use more than 8 GB of VRAM. But you can immediately see that the wattage the RTX 4070 is using is not even close to what the RTX 5070 Ti is using. So you can see the 4070 is capped at around 69 watt here, and the 5070 Ti is already using 125 to 135 watt depending on the scene. And at 1440p with ultra settings as well, we're actually seeing the same difference of 32% in this case. 85 FPS on average for the 4070 mobile and 112 FPS for the 5070 Ti mobile. So, well, nothing special to say here. Both of them run the game pretty well in my opinion, so we're just going to have a look at the next game instead. So, Cyberpunk 2077 at ultra settings without any upscaling and without any frame generation in this case. And at 1080p we're getting 91 FPS for the RTX 4070 mobile and 133 FPS for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile, which is, as you can see, an improvement of already 46%, which is quite massive, all things considered. But again, the efficiency is quite similar for both cards, as the 4070 is actually using only around 105, or in this case it's actually using a bit more than 100 watt, but it's using way less wattage for the results. So the RTX 5070 Ti mobile is, to be honest, not that much more efficient if we compare that to each other. And at 1440p we're already getting an improvement of 58% for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile with 82 FPS over only 52 FPS. So in this case we're actually seeing a reasonable improvement for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile, and it can actually shine a lot in this title at 1440p. And for Cyberpunk 2077 I also tested ray tracing at ultra with DLSS on quality and frame generation set to 2, because I'm not planning on using frame generation by 3 or by 4. I don't think this is a technique that is necessary in any way, but that's a topic for a different video. So in this case we are getting 73 FPS for the RTX 4070 and 107 FPS for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile, whereas the RTX 5070 Ti mobile is providing a much better experience since the base FPS are all a lot higher with around 50 FPS plus, so we're getting less of an input lag in this case. But as you can see, the reading of the frame times was a bit weird here. We are seeing, we're seeing 1% lows of only 45 FPS, but I think that is not correct. I think that's an error in the reading due to the fact that we're using frame generation. In Far Cry 6 at ultra settings and 1080p we're actually seeing the least improvement for today's video for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile with only 7% more FPS. So that's 136 FPS over 127 FPS. And as weird as that sounds, it actually seems as if that's some kind of CPU bottleneck. If you take a look at the usage of the GPUs, they're both not using 100%, not even the 4070 in this case. So at 1440p we're going to see better results here. To be more precise, we are seeing an improvement of now already 37% with an average of 130 FPS for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile over the 95 FPS for the RTX 4070 mobile. So as I said before, at 1440p it makes more sense. In this case we are seeing much more improvement due to the fact that we're not CPU bottlenecked and the GPUs can, well, use more of their power, even though the RTX 5070 Ti mobile is not using 100% in this case either. So it's just the game actually. In Forza Horizon 5, using the Extreme preset at 1080p without any upscaling or so, we are seeing an improvement of 37% for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile with an average of 156 FPS over 114 for the RTX 4070. And in both cases the game is just running perfectly fine, to be honest. And at 1440p, once again, the difference is bigger with now 45% of improvement for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile with an average of now 130 35 FPS over the 93 FPS of the RTX 4070 Mobile. The RTX 5070 Ti Mobile is actually using a bit more than 8GB of VRAM in this case, but that doesn't mean it's using that. It can also be that some part of it is only like reserved or cached in case we need it. In Hogwarts Legacy, I was using the Ultra preset with DLSS on quality and frame generation by 2 at 1080p, and for the RTX 4070 Mobile that resulted in an average of 141 FPS in my benchmark run and 206 FPS, which is a plus of 46% for the RTX 5070 Ti Mobile. As you can see, once again, the frame time graph is a bit wild. I think that's because of frame generation. That also causes the 1% lows to be quite low compared to the average FPS, while I think the actual 1% lows are a bit better than that. And Hogwarts Legacy is always a game with not the best 1% lows, to be honest, due to the fact that it has a lot of micro stuttering, transfer stuttering due to the usage of the Unreal Engine. At 1440p, the difference is quite similar, to be honest, with now 49% of an improvement for the RTX 5070 Ti Mobile with an average of 156 FPS over 105 FPS for the RTX 4070 Mobile. So, well, the game is playable in both cases, either way, even with the 4070, even with ultra settings, due to the usage of DLSS quality in combination with frame generation by 2. But even without frame generation, the game would be just playable just perfectly fine with around 60 FPS or so. For Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, I was actually only using the medium preset because the RTX 4070 Mobile was not able to use the high settings because it would crash due to the lack of more VRAM. Yes, 8GB of VRAM is not enough for the high settings preset here. And we're seeing an improvement of 34% for the RTX 5070 Ti Mobile in this case, with an average of 125 FPS over 93 40 4070. And at 1440p, we can now see that the 5070 Ti Mobile has a very big lead of 79% with an average of 100 FPS. For the medium preset with DLSS and frame generation turned off, while the 4070 was getting an average of 56 FPS. And if you take a look at the VRAM, you can see that the 5070 Ti is actually using 9GB of VRAM, which can be a factor in the much lower FPS in this case, as the 4070 just can't provide that. I mean, it's not crashing, but this is far from being optimal. To be honest, I was a bit surprised that for Red Dead Redemption 2 at the maximum settings, with DLSS turned off, at 1080p, we're actually getting kind of low FPS. I mean, all the settings have been set to the absolute maximum. But I also was surprised that the difference for the 5070 Ti Mobile was quite small, with only 21% in that case. It's not the VRAM, that's fine for both of the cards. It's probably not the CPU. I don't know what's causing that, why it's so small here. And even at 1440p, it's not that much higher, with now 25% more FPS for the 5070 Ti Mobile with an average of 60 FPS over an average of 48 FPS for the RTX 4070 Mobile. For Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I was using the Ultra preset at 1080p, which resulted in an average of 173 FPS for the RTX 5070 Ti Mobile, which is only an improvement of 9% over the 158 FPS for the RTX 4070 Mobile. Actually the second smallest improvement for today's video, and again, I don't really know why that is, but I assume it's once more a CPU bottleneck of some kind, as the 5070 Ti is not used fully with around 82 to 85% only. And at 1440p, that difference is now significantly higher, with 36% of improvement for the RTX 5070 Ti Mobile with an average of 151 FPS, that's not a lot less than at 1080p, and over an average of 111 FPS for the RTX 4070 Mobile. We can now see that the 5070 Ti is using 100% of the GPU almost all the time, and that's probably causing the much better improvement here. For Starfield, I was using the Ultra preset with the DLSS and frame generation turned on, And at 1080p, we're seeing an improvement of 32% for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile with an average of 149 FPS over the 113 FPS for the RTX 4070 mobile. One thing that I've noticed is that the 5070 Ti mobile does have pretty good frame times over all the games that I've tested compared to the RTX 4000 series, where I had a lot of micro stuttering in many games all the time. And my assumption is, I don't really know that, but my assumption is that it has to do with the bandwidth, which is much less for the RTX 4000 series compared to the RTX 5000 series. Now at 1440p, the improvement was much higher with now 97% for the RTX 70 Ti mobile with an average of 124 FPS at 1440p over the pretty low average of 63 FPS for the RTX 4070 mobile, which is kinda unplayable due to the fact that we're using frame generation, meaning our base FPS is probably too low to really enjoy the game due to the fact that we're getting quite some noticeable input lag in this case. For Star Wars Outlaws, I was testing the Ultra preset with DLSS on quality and frame generation turned off. And at 1080p, I saw an average of 120 FPS for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile, which is an improvement of 33% over the 90 FPS on average for the RTX 4070 mobile. While both of the cards are just fine at running this game with these settings really. And at 1440p, the difference is actually quite similar, with now 35% of an improvement for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile with an average of 88 FPS over the 65 FPS of the RTX 4070 mobile. Once again, the RTX 5070 Ti mobile is using a bit more than 8GB of VRAM in this case, while the 4070 is using way less than 8GB. So that's kind of weird. But we can also see that the 1% lows are quite better for the 5070 Ti mobile, and the frame time graph is a bit better and flatter in this case. And last but not least, I was testing the integrated benchmark run for Wukong Black Myth at very high settings with DLSS set to 80% and activated frame generation. And at 1080p, I saw an average of 134 FPS, which is an improvement of 60% for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile. For the RTX 4070, that only resulted in 84 FPS, and once again, keep in mind that we have frame generation turned on, meaning our base FPS is almost too slow to ensure that we're not getting noticeable input lag in that case. Also, the 1% lows have been a lot better for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile once again. Surprisingly, at 1440p, the difference, and I think this is the only game for today where that happened, was actually smaller for the RTX 5070 Ti mobile compared to 1080p for some reason. An average of 94 FPS over the 65 FPS for the RTX 4070. I don't know what was causing that, but once again, as you can see, the frame time graph is not looking that good for the RTX 4070 mobile here. Now, if we take a look at the performance gains at 1080p, we can see a pretty big variation from only 7% up to 60% in the 11 tested games, which results in an average of 32%. It is noticeable, but it's not that huge considering it's the Ti version of the following generation. But at 1080p, despite the good CPUs of the laptops, we're definitely still seeing some CPU bottlenecking, even with these mostly very high settings. While at 1440p, the difference was noticeably bigger with an average of now already 49% over 12 tested games, starting from 25% at Red Dead Redemption 2 up to a vast 97% with Starfield. So here the 5070 Ti definitely makes a lot more sense, and I mean, the laptop does have a WQXGA screen with 2560 by 1600 pixels, so you would probably use that higher resolution in most cases anyhow. I really think that the RTX 5070 Ti is going to be a pretty popular laptop GPU thanks to its now finally 12GB of VRAM, and especially in this laptop, the reasonable price to performance ratio, especially once the prices come down. And in the past, they always came down for laptops, not quite comparable to the desktop GPU market really. And that's all for today. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see my upcoming review of the MSI Vector 16HX. And to be honest, while I was only buying this for the testing, I'm actually thinking about keeping it for myself, but I haven't decided about that yet. Thanks for watching, see you next time, bye bye and tschüss.